And we're going to ask our friend Anisia to do a little reading for us as we start.
As always, more discipline. Let's see. You want to see? I'll hold it for you like this.
We're recording.
Let's see what comes. Maybe it's not for me, the lesson today, so much. Read something comforting and inspiring every day, however brief. Make it a habit. It will enrich you with joy, dispersing the dark clouds that may envelop you afterwards, and providing you with well-being should something unpleasant come up. Everyone needs a good counselor, and in the pages of the gospel you'll find sure guidelines and words of wisdom for every occasion. If people would only think before acting, they would avert countless evils. Be one who does, even if others do not. First time this one. Yeah. Right? Let's get us going with an opening prayer. Mother, Father, God, Divine Creator, thank you very much for all that has been given to us. And above all, in a special moment, like many people may be invited to think about spirituality this weekend, may your light and your compassion be present in our lives, even if we don't know it. May the inspiration of our Master Jesus Christ, the model, the example, the humble one, be revived in its purity by just our own struggle to become better beings. And with that in mind, we humbly ask permission to our mentors and guides to open our Easter Sunday, Spiritual Sunday. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great. So happy Easter again. Easter, I got to tell you, is one of my favorite holidays or seasons of the year, not just because of the chocolate and the Easter bunny, which is very interesting in itself, isn't it? How did the Easter bunny get in there with Christ? Fascinating story. We'll keep that for another time. What I did want to talk with you today is about the main idea behind Easter, which is resurrection. I think that if we have been exposed to the Christian traditions, we have been probably bombarded with the idea of resurrection. Christ came back to life. He's risen after 3 days. And that is all amazing because it's really a fantastic piece of our common history. I can't think of any other figure in history that went through so many difficult challenges, was persecuted, and willingly and kindly went into his own death only to come back to tell us about it. And that is fascinating and incredible on its own, to the point that is so different from our day-to-day nowadays, this idea of resurrection, coming back to life, that many people think that that's impossible, that could never have happened. Right? That we write it off as that's just a symbolism, that is just folklore, that never took place. However, if you are here today, chances are you are familiar with Spiritism, and in Spiritism, we have had the opportunity to interact with the spirits and to understand from their perspective that indeed our life goes on after we leave this physical body. And how do we know that? Because throughout 166 years of research, of communication with the spirits, we have talked to them. They have told us their stories. They have reminded us that we are more than this physical body, and that when this goes away, who we are continues to be. And so the idea that the Christ died and then was 3 days later risen, it's not that incredible to us because we see that in the conversations we have with the spirits, in the books that we read, written by spirits. We understand that a little bit better, I think. It's more plausible. We know about reincarnation. We know that eventually we come back here again in a different body. It's a different kind of resurrection of sorts, if you get my meaning. And all that, it's incredible anyways. But what I do want to hone in today is that while most of the people that we know really fix on this idea of Jesus coming back to life in a physical body, I want to talk to us about we resurrecting ourselves in a different way too. Because resurrection, coming back into another life, coming back to a spiritual world, that we know already. But what we sometimes forget is that we're also in the business of resurrecting ourselves in this lifetime. When we begin to think about spirituality, when we begin to think about these things that we are now understanding a little bit better because of the good advice of our spirits who help us understand Christ and other sages, our life begins to change a little bit. We begin to think a little bit more about ourselves in the long term and less about physical, immediate satisfaction in this world right now. And that in itself is this resurrection that I'm talking about. You see, when I look at the Bible, at the New Testament, and all the stories that are weaved there, especially this beautiful story of Christ resurrecting, coming back to life, what I really see is a beautiful drama between two different worlds. A physical world that continues to call for our attention and tells us to behave in specific ways so that we can be successful, and a spiritual realm that reminds us that we are more than what we see right now. And there's this constant battle between both. And I think that sort of is exemplified in that Holy Week that Christians call, right? In this 1 week of Easter season that begins with what is sometimes called Palm Sunday, when historically Christ finally comes into Jerusalem and is received by a multitude of people with palms. That's why it's called Palm Sunday. Palms were a symbol of conquest of the Romans. They were part of other rabbinic traditions as well. But Christ comes into Jerusalem, some say in a little donkey, some say in a little foal. But he comes into Jerusalem and he's being acclaimed by people after 30 years of preaching kindness and goodness out there. So it begins to get bigger. It is almost as if the world is beginning to say, we recognize you. However, what happens in the next week is incredible. Because from that Sunday, he has dinner with his council, his advisors. He has his feet washed, right, as well, showing how it is to serve and to humble oneself in the benefit of others. He is betrayed by Jesus. He is judged in many different instances by different people who know he is not guilty of the crimes, but nevertheless don't do anything to really stop that, sort of try. He's then flogged, beaten a couple of times, made to carry a cross as a criminal with nobody helping him but one person. Eventually he's crucified and he dies. So in 1 week, he goes from the acclamation of the world to being persecuted and killed by that same world. 3 days later, we know the story. He comes back and shows us that he's still alive. But I like that symbolism quite a bit because sometimes I wonder if we are not going through that same process in a different way. We're also sometimes seeking the recognition of the world, and sometimes the world give it to us. But be not surprised if a little while later that's taken away. Be not surprised if that world that had everything working for you may just almost unjustly revert itself. Because after all, why are we looking for the acclamation or to conform to a world that is not sick? that is not well, that is sick. Doesn't it strike us sometimes as odd that we want to succeed or do the things that the world tells us we should do, but when we look at this world is not doing so great to begin with? Isn't that a little bit of a definition of madness? To want the recognition of something that is not going so well? Shouldn't we seek and really focus on the recognition of ourselves, or feeling better, of developing ourselves, and being at peace with whom we truly are? So I think that in many ways, Easter is that resurrection. The physical resurrection, we know that it will happen. We will continue to live after this. We might come in different bodies, in different lifetimes, reincarnation. But the spiritual resurrection, that's a little bit tougher. Because I think Easter is about spiritual awakening. Resurrection is about spiritual awakening. It's about changing ourselves in a way that makes us really wake up to a different piece. And it's really hard. Let's be honest. It is really hard to change our mindset, to change our perspective. Because when we do that, the world sort of calls us crazy. What? You believe in reincarnation? What? You believe in life after life? It has never been proven, some say. I would argue it has never been disproven. But the world calls us to be at this set of values that are not making us happy. Our rich, our famous, our beautiful are not necessarily happier than we are. What we have is an illusion that happiness is all those things. But it isn't. If we look closely, it isn't. It isn't about fame. It isn't about status. It isn't about beauty. Although all those things are nice. It's not about that at the core. And what fascinates me about this whole resurrection Easter thing is we go through this. We go from our Palm Sunday to our crucifixion in the physical world, kicking and screaming. We don't want it. We want to stay on Palm Sunday. We want to be in that moment of glory. But we got to go through the process to let go of our old selves and create a new self. And that's what's fascinating about Jesus for me. He went through it kindly. He was so certain of the spiritual reality. He was so certain of everything that was to come that he went through it without worrying so much. Now, for us, we're not there yet. And so we worry. And sometimes we think that it's so distant, so far away, that we can't possibly do any of that. But the truth is, we are doing that in a smaller scale every single day. We are resurrecting ourselves every single day. We're thinking differently. I see resurrection in many different ways. I see it in a friend who is struggling and decides to see a therapist and talks it through to understand what's going on and reinvent himself. That's resurrection. I see it in a family who has had a child with cancer that was clinically dead and came back to life. That is physical resurrection, but the spiritual resurrection is the family realizing that what really matters is being together, being awakened to the idea of enjoying each other's company more than getting sidetracked by life. That too is resurrection. And I see a world that was sent indoors for 2 or 3 years because of a pandemic. And now it's coming back from that and is struggling. Should we go back to work the way we were before? Remote work, hybrid work? Should we quit our jobs and find something more meaningful? What should I do? Should I move? Should I stay? That's also a group of people collectively finding or trying to find meaning. That is also a world resurrecting itself. So these transformations are happening all the time. There are people who are trying to find their space in the world just like we are. Sometimes they're moving cities. They're carrying their families with them. They're reinventing themselves. All of that is resurrection. So the question that lingers, in my opinion, then is, what lessons do we take from that? What lessons are we making stick in our hearts about this new perspective? Because change is a beautiful thing. It might hurt during the process of change, but the byproduct of change, it's everything. We are always changing. We refuse, we fight, we kick and scream, but we are always changing. Every single day we're learning something new. Every single day our bodies are regenerating. Our cells are multiplying and dying. Little resurrections happening at the biological level within us. So why are we so worried about finding acceptance in a world that is not well adjusted? So, in this moment of Easter, in this moment of celebration, let us not focus on the message of pain and suffering that many people make Easter to be. It's really not about Christ suffering at the cross. It's really not about blood, whiplash, gore. It's not about that. If you are stuck in that, you are missing the most beautiful message for me about Christianity. And that is that even in the toughest situations in this world, even during the most painful moments or lonely moments or sad moments we can ever have, we are going to come out on the other end of it, and we will be better for it. And while it seems, if you look at the whole crucifixion of Christ, that he was alone from a physical perspective, we know that from a spiritual perspective, he never was. Can you imagine the multitude of spirits and souls watching all of that happen while it happened? Christ was also aware of that. He was aware of his spiritual nature so much that the sufferings of this life weren't as hard for him as it is for us today. And I think that is the ultimate resurrection. Can we think of ourselves as spiritual beings? Because once we do that, the challenges we have in this world become a little bit easier. They're not going to go away, but they will be greatly diminished. And the truth is that all of us are going through something that nobody knows. We're all struggling with something. And sometimes we need to be reminded of that, because the world tells us that everybody else is okay. We post pictures on social media where everybody's happy. Everybody's beautiful. Everybody's traveling somewhere, eating expensive food. But that's not what really is happening. Nothing wrong with social media. But what we make of social media and our lives and our perceptions sometimes is not healthy for us. So what is it that's going on within us? Are we okay with that? Do we know, do we remember that we are cared for, that we're loved, and that we're seen, that we have our spiritual friends with us, that God is always with us, and that we are going to be okay because God has made us? And what kind of God would make us to suffer? That wouldn't be a God. So ultimately, our success is happiness, is joy. It's not the things that the world promises, but it's the things that are in our heart. And today I want to celebrate that with you. I want to celebrate that we are all resurrecting in different ways, in different times, in different rates of change, but we're all changing. And what a wonderful and beautiful thing it is to be able to do that with you. So I say that from the bottom of my heart. I am so thankful that we have the example of those who are way wiser than us and continue to show us the way, such as our older brother, Jesus Christ. But I'm also very helpful that I get to be here with you, because ultimately I think that his example is the way for us to transform ourselves at our own pace, with our own understanding. and that we can do it together so that we can help each other out. What a beautiful thing it is. So from the bottom of my heart, happy Easter. I hope that your personal transformation, not transportation, but transformation. I hold your transportation to the transformation may not yield any altercation. I'm not going to start rhyming over here, although I'm really tempted. But my point is, I really hope that your personal transformation, whatever shape, size, speed, rate, continues to go. And that you take the time to ask yourselves, what am I learning from these challenges that I have? How will I come out better for them? Because ultimately you will. And we're really happy that you're here today, and we hope that your personal Easter may continue to be a bright, a beautiful one, and thank you for spending some time celebrating this with us.